Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the T.O.A Podcast. I am your host, Onvermel. Onvermel, Toe of Gravity, King of Purple, Prince of Purple, and everyone's favorite person in the universe, obviously. I'm greeted here today because we are at the House of Eck, which means I am greeted here by Eck. How's it going, Eck?
Well, if you're the Prince of Purple, can I be like the
The
king?
boss of Blacktron?
The boss of Blacktron works. It's got that added
Blacktron Buddha?
of appeal. I like the boss of the Blacktron boss.
The Blacktron boss,
The big Blacktron boss.
The big Blacktron.
No, sorry, the biggest Blacktron boss.
I just like the big Blacktron boss. That sounds better than the biggest. But, Blacktron's not what we're talking about today. I'm sorry.
Someday.
One of these days, we're going to have a debate between you and Zach about Blacktron versus Blacktron 2.
Duke it out.
However, today, we want to talk about something a little bit more Bionicle, which,
is usually kind of what our focus likes to be.
I like to at least do every second one for the most part. Most people in this channel are here because of Bionicle. Almost everyone is.
It's kind of why this channel exists.
Yes.
Bionicle.
So, what we're going to talk about today is Bionicle Story. Specifically our Bionicle stories. Because we're not just collectors. We're not just mockers. But we're also storytellers to some degree.
Even if the stories are just in our heads.
Pretty much, because every mock we build ends up having a story or a backstory to it, a name, a purpose.
We don't build mocks, we build characters.
That's why we don't break them, too,
and that
usually.
is why we've got especially myself, I've got just a couple boxes full of old, simple mocks.
That are just but they have characters.
I can't take them apart, because
they've slowly been dwindling down.
Yeah,
even the potatoes.
Their numbers have shrunk. The potatoes, yes. And they're down to 4. There used to be 5, I think.
Something like that. Well, are kind of giant potato?
No, I'm not counting.
Was there 5 with him?
I'm pretty sure. Well, maybe there was 5.
Or was he Spud? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure I just had 5 normal potatoes, and I have 4 right now.
For anyone who's listening, you'll have no idea what we're talking about, but that's okay. That's okay.
Unless you happen to have read that one guest comic I did on Bionicle Tales.
It's famously bad, people. It's famously bad. Go check it out.
Infamously bad.
Infamously bad. But no, it's because we do like building creating Bionicle stories, and even just a couple nights ago, I even just wrote a little 6.5 page story for a mock that I built just 2 days prior, which the premise is hilarious because we all know, we've all seen Web of Shadows, right? If you haven't, shame on you. But
go and watch it now!
But watch the other 2 first.
Yes, you gotta watch them in order.
I think one of the most memorable lines that people know is Kitongu.
The Kitongu?
No, Kitongu is the most honorable creature. Basically, mishearing Kitongu as the Kitongu.
Matau, he gave us the greatest line ever.
And I basically had a minifig that I called Toanongu, so I always had to build a.
It helped that he was Keetorange.
And yeah, so I was like, let's call him Nongu for the fun of it. And so I wanted to build a mock, an actual Bionicle mock of this character who was the key to Nongu, and then I wanted to make a story around it. And next thing you know, a few hours of writing, and boom, got a short little story.
Usually the character comes before the actual creation.
Sometimes.
We think of a character I need to build this character.
That is true. Most of the mocks I've built just to build a mock don't have much character in them. And then those ones usually don't stay built too. I have a couple who are still built.
Sometimes character comes out of him. But yeah, mostly it's the character first, the mock second.
Very, very common, very common. So, I had written this story. Actually, I only wrote about 1.5 pages just as a quick backstory. But Howe won and mentioned that there was a Bionicle Story contest on Tumblr. I can't remember who was running. I can't remember her name. He only pointed out. So he was saying, if you just add a little bit more to the story, maybe it'll fit in pretty well with this contest. So I was like, well,
hey, a chance to win some Bionicle swag? Well, why not? Why not?
And you know what? I was like, I'm intrigued enough to see where the story might go. So I decided to extend it, and I haven't entered in quite yet. I got 2 weeks to do that, but I just want to get a better picture for Toanongu. Maybe just quickly double check some of the grammar and polish it off just a little bit, and then boom, put it out there. So if anyone's curious about that story, don't read it, please. It'll hurt your ears. Wait, sure, yeah, we'll go with that. I'll stick with my original statement. It'll hurt your ears. But I've written some other Bionicle stories. In fact, funny thing is, I have completed technically only 2 books in my life. little short books when you're really young that you do for like.
And
I don't quite count.
We're not talking published books. No.
No. I'm just saying like actual like full stories, like actual lengthy enough books, like not just like a few pictures of pages with a little bit of like words next to it. I'm not counting. I mean like actual books that there's a beginning and end. There's actual story and characters. I've completed 2 books on the first draft.
They're probably comparable to one of the Bionicle novel books.
Length very close, and guess what? They're both Bionicle books.
Gosh, I'm so surprised. I never could have guessed.
One I started was 7 years ago, and is actually about T.O.A Onvermel and his team before Onvermel was actually synonymous with me, sort of. And then the other one I'd actually just finished recently as a collection basically of shorter stories that all intertwine with each other, which again, only the first draft. One of these days I do plan to complete these stories, and maybe like silly with all the short stories is like maybe narrate them for the channel. But that I'm not going to say that's going to happen any year soon. That's like a project for a whole nother day. But those 2 stories had very different, I would say, ways of going about making a Bionicle story. Because the first one is just my own story with my own characters on my own little island. It doesn't contradict anything, but it very much is in its own little pocket, like essentially universe within the grander Bionicle lore, but it doesn't contradict anything. However, the other one, I went out of my way purposely for a lot of times that it would actually try to intertwine with actual events that happen in the lore, such as the T.O.A Dark Hunter War. I have like several characters who actually participate in that, and tried my best not to contradict anything. But again, for my personal Bionicle universe, I don't want it to contradict the canon. I want to be able to technically still fit in the canon universe.
Which is why our own Bionicle universe takes place after.
I mean, there's a little bit of liberty. There's only really one major difference, and that is just essentially how you perceive how the planets formed afterwards, where you assume it's just like larger continents, not just a bunch of islands like before. But in my mind, Manui recreated all the islands for all the different habits.
Is it ever actually explicitly stated?
No, but I would say I would say it's kind of implied. Maybe not implied, but it's never referenced that any islands reminiscent of Manui exist. So, like I said, I'm skirting the line of what I can get away with there. And as to that, like for the most part, I'm in my own little section of the universe. So, and there's only like certain characters who might interact, but for the most part, I actually try to keep within the proper Bionicle canon. And but honestly,
it wasn't always that way. Back when we actually played with our toys, we still played with the
T.O.A
Nova.
What was proper canon? We followed. There was rules that you abided by, like T.O.A did, like the inner workings of the universe. I would say we kept strictly to for the most part, I would say.
Well, in later years, it's not like we were pulling out our bow rock and playing with them. No, it was just like we would take the T.O.A Nova, the T.O.A Mari.
Much later.
We wouldn't actually use the Mystic and Fantoka, because why would you use those when you could use the real T.O.A Nova?
We also, I don't think, had all the Mystic and T.O.A Nova. Well, actually, we think we did. We did. But when we were younger, back in let's say 2004, there's a lot less solidified lore to Bionicle. A lot of it was still mystery, so you can kind of get away with it. But as we got older, we were like, well, I mean, don't get me, we found ways to explain why we had 3 taboos. It's called the cave. I think we might have mentioned this in a much older podcast.
Probably mentioned
the
cave. Because it is a relic of a bygone era.
Which, don't get me wrong,
which still amuses us.
I still want to be able to incorporate the cave in essence and like a spiritual successor in my universe to an extent, which I've had ideas, but I haven't quite found a way. But that's because I haven't worked on any my original book for quite a while. So actually, honestly, this would have been a good conversation to have with Howe 1, because he's actually done, I think, some writing for Bionicle, because I know he's made, I think, a story about Variki, at least a short little
Well, Howe 1 does like to write.
He loves to write. If anyone's ever bumped into him on Tumblr, it's like he's very wordy. He's very wordy, and really any social media that he's gonna, or forum that he can get a chance to word out, he'll word out. Let me tell you, very different than us two. Because honestly, I would say Zacta, you, me, all of us, we actually like making stories. We like writing to an extent.
I'd say I like making stories more than I like writing down stories.
Yeah,
And that's
writing
definitely the
down's
same
a
with
lot of
you.
work.
Zacta is definitely like, if he comes up with a story, he will write it down.
Or maybe not so much write it down, but take the pictures and remember the details and make a comic about it. There's not a lot of writing down.
Zacta does a lot of not
Does he think
necessarily with Bionicle, but he does write a lot of stories.
Oh yeah, that's true. He does write. I think mostly of his comics where he doesn't actually script; he just goes with the flow. But sorry, he does do a lot
But
of
yeah,
writing
also
as
just
well.
look how many comics does Zacta have? A lot more than you and I.
Yep.
Therefore, he likes to.
I have technically only ever made one Bionicle comic, the Howe Report.
Yeah.
That's actually really funny because in that basically we have McPappy McNear, our Bionicle reporter, Agori.
McPappy McNear reporting live at the scene of the insert something here.
Whatever.
Probably.
Basically, the most stereotypical like report you can get, and basically I just had a comic interviewing my original Onvermel mock after his like first major upgrade, and literally the conversation about them was literally just about mocks being upgraded constantly, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm probably going to do for another one," and it all came true. And even the prediction was that Vilmac, like Joe or Zach, has like larger guys were going to get updated next, and he was right about that. Like it's kind of amusing, but like what I totally called it. Like I totally called what was. Not that it was like a difficult process to call, like, oh, who are we going to update? And like even you, May, I know made actually for Bionicle Stories, you still have like one that you were working on was actually the T.O.A.
I did have a brief comic, yeah.
But what was it? Tell us.
It was essentially if the Doctor from Doctor Who got teleported or whatever, this TARDIS went to the Bionicle universe, and now he's a T.O.A. with the Vahi.
So he's kind of a T.O.A. of time.
Yeah, he's also like some
sort of. Was it just because you looked at the Vahi and you wanted to use it on a mock, and you're like, wait a minute.
I was very big into Doctor Who, and
well, that was when
because he's a time traveler with a mask of time.
Well, Matt Smith was still the Doctor at that point, so like Doctor Who hype was high as it had ever been, I think, for us.
Mm-hmm. And if the Doctor was going to be a T.O.A., of course it's going to be a T.O.A. of Light. Look, obviously canonically there was only one T.O.A. of Light and one Vahi. Well, he's from a different universe, from a different canon, and somehow it's there.
I mean, I would say the whole canon to that.
I only made like 3-4 comics. I still have pictures sitting around somewhere for a fourth.
I don't think even the comics they quite met T.O.A. Your Blacktron T.O.A. I think those
those are the pictures I have just sitting waiting to be made.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have that. I think the pictures also aren't as naturey as
no, it's obviously on my balcony of the old apartment.
Yeah, so it's like sometimes you look at old pictures of like comics and go, I want to make a comic out of this because these are nice pictures. Other times you go,
I haven't actually looked at those pictures in ages. I somewhat recently stumbled upon the script and I'm like, oh yeah, I still have this because I have the script written down somewhere. I'm not even sure where I could actually find the pictures. I'd have to go hunting on my computer somewhere.
Yeah, spelunking on computers is always fun,
especially when it's Brickshelf.
Ooh, Brickshelf spelunking is hilarious. I love doing
that. It's always good times. Just look back at the old mocks. Not usually Bionicle, though. Those ones are quick peek. Ugh, those are crap. Let's get out of here.
Bionicle mocks do not age like other mocks do, I think.
Also, they were very just...
I would say they're also more like I would say we had an exponential growth in our ability of building Bionicles. Well, system was a gradual.
Our old Bionicle mocks weren't very nostalgic either.
They were just... We didn't build... The thing about Bionicle mocks, old Bionicle ones were, we just built an army. Or random monochrome characters, nameless everywhere. When we built
with a little bit of space, however,
most system mocks, we were building ships, cars, or castles for pre-existing characters. And in our headcanon, those ships were just older ships in the past. Like it's not like let's say the Alpha Centauri, when your first Blacktron ship was built, that ship still canonically existed.
Oh yes,
it was just an older ship, which makes sense. Those minifigs are still around.
But when we made old Bionicle creations, it's like, yeah, this is just a super red guy, and this is a super Tahu.
There were a few exceptions, which I believe with a video a while back.
A few characters did come out.
I think we did a podcast like this summer where we briefly mentioned that. Maybe I was with Zacta because I like with chains. Even like I think Zacta has the most characters that he recreated from his childhood.
Zacta definitely got.
For me, it was like chains. Heraklic, which are characters from the same batch, and like there's one person I do want to build, and that's the teleporter in Zakarok's army who's got the brown Akaku. I ordered a brown Akaku specifically to build this character because I built him twice in 2 separate made-up like batches. He was in different armies, but he was the same character. So I'm like, you know what? I want to recreate him because I actually
And
always
he can be in a third army this time.
he
Or
was
he
not
can
a
go
good
back
mock
to
by
the
any
old.
means, but I liked him for whatever reason. I liked him. So
None of my old era mocks actually stand out. Like, none of them really had any endearing characters to me, so none of them are likely.
oh yeah, and then Dentar technically, well, he wasn't a character back in the day. He was just big, and I wanted to redo.
He was the
big.
biggest and ugliest.
So like I said, like there was a few, and like back in the day, yeah, we did not build characters. We built colors more accurately.
Yep.
I'm going to build a big black guy, and for the good guys, I'm going to build.
Well, we had the T.O.A colors. There was like T.O.A red and T.O.A
But
green.
if you look at all the stuff that we remember from our past, do you know who spearheaded all of these? Zacta, pretty much.
Zacta was definitely the most into
Because I would
building and creating Bionicles.
definitely, because like I remember usually when we would build Bionicle made-ups, like he would start it. I'd probably start at the same time, and you would like start the day after or later that day and kind of get joined in the fun too.
Zacta was definitely the most into creating his own Bionicles back in the day.
And even like nowadays, I would say he's the most into creating his own like characters. He's also a lot more willing to go past the canon and just be a little bit more free with it and just do whatever. Like
Zacta is not
build
hindered by
Bionicle
building.
Jedi. Like he'll build Bionicle Jedi. He'll build Bionicles. He'll build Bionicle Scooby Doo Toa.
Zacta
Yes.
isn't as he doesn't build. Think of a character first and then build it. He just builds it.
I mean, sometimes it does too.
well, sometimes he does, yes, but he's
Well, I
not
can
like
tell.
us. We pretty much
I
only
needed
build if there's like a specific character or this like
usually.
whole
I
we
haven't
need to
just
build.
sat down and just be able to build a random thing in a while.
I built some guy with the chrome Howe just because I wanted to use the chrome Howe.
But I can say
He
this,
has no character.
and I think his mock shows it. You can just sometimes kind of tell when someone doesn't have a character, because you're just like, well, what are you? Nothing's bad. I'm just saying, you can just kind of
And that's the
tell.
biggest thing with me is like I have to build a character and I have to do something with him.
Why do you think I haven't used my Chrome Howe on a character yet? What character is worthy of a shiny Chrome Howe?
Note how we're saying character, not mock. We're not building a mock with the chrome Howe. We're building a character with the chrome Howe.
Yes. This is the thing, also a big difference between Bionicle and System. Bionicles I build characters, System I build mocks.
Objects, usually.
Objects, because like the minifigs I don't break. The minifigs are the same.
And they
but
get tweaked around.
What they
of course.
inhabit though is the big, difference. So, but it's actually interesting
When you
because-
build system, you build structures, you build objects.
but
When you
actually
use Bionicle, you build
thinking about like all these Bionicle like characters is, you look back. Sorry, I had just a little bit of drank a Mountain Dew earlier. It's coming back to bite me.
Mountain Dew, frostbite.
It came back to bite me literally. But with the Lego stories, like you look back on our childhood, we How One and Lost Toa spearheaded a lot of just small little like books, like like maybe like 50-page books. I mean, for them it was 50 pages. For us, me, it was like maybe 10 if I was lucky. But basically,
No, even for them back in the day, it was more like 15.
15. But basically, the point was like, they wrote a lot of Lego books about a lot of different characters and themes and everything. Like basically anything was new, they'd write a book about it. How One, he was very much everyone was copying him on this.
How One spearheads a lot of things, and the
But
rest
you
of
look
us
at
little Toa
You
just
can kind
followed
of tell
along.
where it tapered off because none of us ever did that for Bionicle. The only Bionicle book from our childhood was How One and the Quest from Manu, and even then.
And it wasn't even about Bionicles. It was about like finding a
discovering
Bionicle mask and searching for it, because it was all about the other characters of normal minifigs in the world.
Yeah, like we never made a like Bionicle book back then. Like, I think
But we didn't have to, because the Lego company made Bionicle books for us.
I think that might be half the problem because like it's not like we ever wrote on Star Wars or like Harry Potter books. In all honesty, for Lego.
But
Like,
we
sure,
made
Star
Johnny
Wars,
Thunder books.
Star Wars weaseled in, but Johnny Thunder didn't have much any story. He was just a character.
Like I said, that's why like How One wrote books about Johnny Thunder, because the Lego company didn't give us books about him.
True,
So we had
true.
to create our own stories.
But it is interesting that like, despite how influential Bionicle was from 2001 to 2003, like you look at basically reports like How One kept track of what everyone
He
was
literally
getting,
had
like, a
some
month
Lego
to month.
reports.
Every month about what to do with Legos in the household, and from 2001 to do it like through 2001 through 2002 specifically,
There was a lot of
Bionicle
Bionicle purchases.
dominated, like absolutely dominated. Even in 2003, like up until basically the change of color, like pretty much up until the end of 2003, like when the Masculine Light came out, at that point, Bionicle was just dying. Yet for some reason, it never got to the point where it got stories.
I think in my case specifically, it's just because I was probably leaning more to being a collector.
There was definitely a high collecting factor to Bionicle.
I wasn't as
back
interested
in
in making my own stuff. I was more interested in collecting what was
all
out there.
All the red and black that you had, that you could get.
Exactly.
Like, even back, like, that's the thing is, because there were 6 colors and essentially 6 of us who were collecting. I mean, well, the 2 sisters both shared blue, but,
they were only half interested in
so
Bionicle
it balanced
anyways.
out. So it balanced out. So basically, like, well, I only need to collect the brown because all my other siblings are collecting the other colors. And that pretty much went all the way up until 2006, where I was kind of started petering out. That we're like, you know what, we just want to get
when
more.
Zacta got all 6 Paraka, he was the first one to have
all 6 of anything.
Yeah, all 6.
And he was like the first one to have like several sets of 6 before I think any of us got a set of Borak, which I think was like the first.
I had 5 Borak for the longest time.
Same.
I had no Korak.
Insane. You and me had very similar sets. Like,
well, we had 4 T.O.A.
The same
4 T.O.A.
We had 3 T.O.A Nuva. I had Patu and a Nua and a Kopaka Nuva, and you had a Nua Nuva and Tahu Nuva.
And Galley Nuva for a while.
But not long enough, at least in the back in the day. But that was a problem with you and me play sucked because we just had duplicates of everyone.
Yeah, playing with each other, it was interesting and boring at the same time.
That's one reason why I think Bionicle didn't work well with playing when we were younger, because we just had duplicates of characters. There wasn't enough just random mooks that you could make your own.
Like, our 2 older brothers were smarter. Like, they didn't have very many.
They split it up pretty much 50-50 between the 2 of them.
There was the odd character overlap, and obviously they would get,
we would have to get to the argument of who would get the real Anua, because obviously I had Patu, you had Tahu. However, you had Kopaka first, so you said Kopaka was yours, but you also said blacks were yours too, so Anua was yours. So I got stuck with just Patu sometimes. I would have to fight.
Older brother.
I would have to fight. Say no. I had Anua first. He's mine. I have the real Anua. And then we just kind of stopped caring who had the real one. Actually, no, we never stopped caring. We always.
I still have the real.
I had the first Anua, so mine's technically the real one. But no, so it's. But I would say, I would think the first. I'm actually trying to think of the first real Bionicle, like. I think Zacta actually wrote the first Bionicle story, because I think he made a short story, like just a very short story about a T.O.A of yours and his that you guys had built. And I think that was the first official Bionicle fan fiction, essentially, that any of us wrote. It's like your red T.O.A Fire and his T.O.A Water.
I think so, yeah.
Because
I remember this. Like, it's coming back. I remember this now.
I don't think you've written anything.
I have never actually written anything other than the odd little comic here and there. Most of my headcanon...
I guess the comics, yeah.
My headcanon is very much my head canon.
Very much. I
have my own storylines and characters, but they're all just in my head and in the mocks.
Yeah, the funny thing is, the stories I finished is like, my first book that I did the first draft is all on paper. The second one I did on first draft is all on the computer. And then I've also got some, like a little bit to Callan's Curse story written down. However, that is completely and utterly non-canon in my head. That is fourth wall breaking, like, nonsense.
It's like it lives in the fourth wall.
It is pretty much.
It is the fourth wall.
And
that one's is neither written down on paper.
I have some notes.
There's some notes, but it's supposedly supposed to be a video.
It lives on as an inside joke, essentially, more than anything. And one of these days I'm going to continue. That's why I built my own Ek mock, just so I can use that for the stuff because I'm not living with you anymore. So
no,
I still want to work on that. It's not like I've given up. I'm not going like, the inspiration isn't there. It's more so the energy isn't there, because it's a
laziness. You are
look, when there's like 4 steps to a single project, that's too many.
Yeah, 2 steps.
Writing, you just have to sit down and type. I don't make outlines and stuff. I just write as I go, which is why I like writing just short little stories, because I don't really have to.
And this podcast, it's only 2 things: you record, you edit, you post.
Yeah, and the editing is, I've narrowed it down a lot when I was used to do, because I've realized it's a podcast. Most people listen to it. There are certain times I need to put a picture on screen, but on all honesty, I'm like, who cares? It helps a little bit, but honestly not enough, and didn't really change the views, all 3 of them. So like,
it went from 4 to 5 back to 4, so it hurt.
It's peaked up after I put the launcher video out. It kind of peaked up a little bit.
Well, that's because you were doing interesting, cool content.
How the watch time on each video was, I don't know. I didn't look at that. But at least I had like so many people click on video. How many of them stayed in the video? I probably was like 2.
It
Maybe.
matters not. We know who those two are, by the way.
Mm. See, I still have would love to write more Bionicle stories, and also the fact that I realize I can just sit down and just write a short little story for a character might become more of a common thing for me now, just because sometimes characters I have, I get an idea for them, and then after 5 years, I'm like, what was your character again? There's something about you I remember, but I don't remember it anymore.
I will be honest, I have been kind of wanting an urge to do it because I built a bunch of mocks that have Rurus. The misprint Rurus. And I kind of just want to, when I post them online, just write a little snippet about the character.
Snippets. You like snippets?
It'd be like half a page sort of thing.
I can't do that with certain mocks, such as my older mocks, because they have so much backstory that I'm like, how do I cut
this little
short?
snippet turned into a giant mouthful.
However, newer mocks are so much more, less to them.
Because that's all you have is a little snippet.
Exactly.
You haven't been
if I posted Dark Callan, that would be way too much hard to explain to anyone. It's like, okay, trying to explain Dark Callan to someone is like trying to explain the inside joke that makes sense, but it takes a lot of stuff, and you have to go, and why is this funny? And go, it's not, but it's funny.
Or you could just oversimplify and say he's Dark Callan, he's Callan, and
he's dark. But the thing is, Dark Callan specifically serves Dark Callan, but he was created from my own paranoia of Dark Callan that was pawned on to me by Rocco. But does he actually exist or is he not? I don't really know. But is he actually Ayutoro or not? I don't know. Is Dark Callan actually Neri? I don't know.
Well, we don't think he's actually Neri, but Neri may be Callan. We're kind of suspicious about him.
We're very suspicious. I mean, he's a mask maker after all. Who else can make a Kakama look like a Ruru, right?
Who else would want to? The Kama has more sense than that.
Exactly.
A Kakama looks like a Kakama, and a Ruru just looks like a Ruru.
Also, just on a quick side note, I was mentioning Callan. The fact that Callan's mask does not match his mask power is the only other person I've ever seen that do outside of essentially the canon with Krakua and Norik, where their masks are different shapes and their powers.
I mean, we don't exactly read everyone's self-mock details.
No, but most of the time when I see mocks and blurbs, they have the mask that they're wearing. I don't usually see people wear masks that are different shapes and I mean, I think that's just more of a preference.
Nowadays, if people want something different, they just 3D print it anyways.
And I don't know why Callan has it's actually funny how Callan was the motivation for stories back in the day for me, because we had this made up rivalry.
Callan does some pretty good YouTube stuff. Go check him out.
I actually really like Callan stuff because it's I'll admit kind of minimal effort in a lot of it, but he's learned to make that minimal esque kind of semi stop motion at moments make it look really good. He's gone really good.
He's perfected his art.
Very much so, and it's kind of inspiring. I look at that and go, that doesn't look too difficult. I
could maybe do
it wouldn't look as good as that, but I feel like I could. And
it looks fun.
Well, it looks fun at first, and then you start to do it and go, taking pictures is a lot of work.
Bloody work. So many photos.
Very, very many photos. But I can at least say at the moment, I have plans for more Bionicle stories. I always have more in my head than I'll ever write down, in all honesty. And one of these days, I wouldn't mind just being able to just write down basically just a little bit to everybody, I mean, I used to write down a lot of just on pencil for a lot of my URAP and T.O.A.
Yeah, he's got a whole book of this stuff.
I got 2 binders full of
He's even doing
Bionicle
pictures.
Notes. Oh yeah, I drew pictures of all my T.O.A. at one point.
Some of them better than others, obviously.
And I even have pictures of T.O.A. that I don't have built. The previous T.O.A. team, to a CF Nui. Only one of that, 2 of those members of the team are technically still alive, but none of them are in their proper form. So, like I said, there was definitely a point where my peak of Bionicle was when I was drawing pictures. I had a blog. I was wanting to start the YouTube channel. I was building. I was collecting. Now I'm building. I'm collecting. I have a YouTube channel. I got writing. I got a tattoo.
Okay, I think you just one-upped your previous stuff.
The only thing is I don't use the blog anymore, but now I technically do have an account on Tumblr that's mostly just used for Bionicle.
And you're actually doing your YouTube instead of talking and
I've actually basically interacted with someone who was involved with Bionicle, with Stuart Sager, who was a comic artist from 2006 and 2007, because he was doing for Bionicle Day, his live stream. So not really talking directly to, but interacting with, which was kind of cool. And I actually got some signed comics for him, which was...
No, you actually got those. That's right.
Yeah, but those are going to be something I think I'll forget about at some point, just because signed comics I don't have them displayed. But I'm like, hey, I got signed comics from a Bionicle comic artist, so those are very. I'm very proud to own those. Very very proud. But yeah, no, very very fun. This has kind of gone to some random directions in a few places. The thing is about the Bionicle stories, there's not as much to say because we haven't done as much. I could go into many minute details about so many characters and how they fit in with the canon. I could tell you characters who have connections to Lesvik's Island, who I very specifically tweaked around. I can tell people who have connections with the T.O.A Dark Hunter War. I can tell you people who are in the Dark Hunters. I can tell you who Pridak's first general was.
Yes, but nobody cares.
Actually, I'm going to say this. Because Pridak's first general just mentioned that he was a general who was there, one of my characters was Pridak's general, and he has an army because he has Pridak's old army. So, like I said, I've worked myself around canon, and I'm very happy with
If canon gives you an opening, you take it.
Well, it's unnamed characters that we don't know the fate to. Timeline works perfectly. Which, by the way, can I just like to say I feel so sorry for anyone who works in a story group who has to get timelines consistent.
Trust me, I'm writing my own book and trying to keep things consistent. Of just so many days of this and that.
Look at this
difficult.
way. I have over 50 Bionicle characters, all from different time eras that I had to figure out who lands where, and if they fit with an actual canon Bionicle storyline, I need to figure out when that event happened, work that in, so it's not too late. Oh my gosh, it is. I actually have
Sometimes
this.
Onvermel takes it a little too.
I have this on a document now, like a lot of it. So at this point now, I can just go back to this document. But then I realized the T.O.A Dark Hunter War happened closer to the Great Cataclysm than I thought. So that could have put a monkey into my wrench. So yeah, that was fun. But that has been us talking about Bionicle stories. And me rambling a lot at Eck over here.
What else is new?
Nothing new. So I think this was actually kind of fun, kind of just looking back and remembering a couple things. But I hope some of you guys have liked this. Please like the video if you've made it this far. Please comment. I enjoy it when you do. Hey, General Pitbull, I like your videos you've been putting out. Put out more. And I've been your host, Onvermel. This has been the T.O.A Podcast, and we are retiring from the night.